Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a comedy drama film and is directed by Quentin Tarantino and stars Leonardo Dicaprio, Brad Pitt, and Margot Robbie. So straight off the bat, I just want to say that I liked this movie. In fact, I would say that this is my favorite film of the year so far. And I just wanted to say that first because I don't want people thinking I hate this movie, because while I do like it a lot, there are quite a few big problems. However, none of these problems majorly affect the film for me. So before I get into my negatives on the film, I'll talk about the stuff I loved. Firstly, I loved how this film was entirely a love letter to the 1960s Hollywood. Technically, everything was impressive. This film was well shot, well lit, well edited. I was definitely in love with the world that Tarantino was displaying. And also, all the actors and the characters they played were fantastic. However, with a few particular ones, I did have mixed reactions, which I will talk about in a little bit. But for me, the true standout in the film was Brad Pitt's character. This is one of the best roles that Brad Pitt has played in years. And with Margot Robbie, while she doesn't contribute a lot to the film, just her presence alone was simply charming and enjoyable to watch. So yeah, like a lot of Tarantino films, the best things in his movies are the technicalities and the actors. And that's no different with this film, as Tarantino once again hits it out of the park. However, here are my few negatives on the film. Like I said earlier, none of what I'm about to say ruined the film for me. Firstly, the biggest issue I had with this movie was it was too much of an observational film. For the majority of this film, we are looking at a time capsule that is 1960s Hollywood, which might not bother a few people, but for me, nothing happens. Literally, nothing happens in the movie. For the majority of the runtime, we are just observing the characters living their lives in Hollywood. With DiCaprio's character, he's a struggling actor. With Brad Pitt, he's just traveling around. Margot Robbie pops up in the film occasionally. And honestly, that's it. There is no conflict in this movie. And I know what a few people might be saying, that this film is just a chill look at the golden age of Hollywood, which I don't have a problem with. Like with 2001: A Space Odyssey, nothing happens in that movie, but I'm just along for the ride because it's such a visual treat to look at. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood desperately needed conflict. Because yeah, while it's fun to observe these characters, there's no real story connecting them together. It's only just characters doing their own business. And while the activities of a few of these characters were interesting to watch, especially Brad Pitt, with the character played by DiCaprio, I thought he was boring. There's two sides to DiCaprio's character that I liked and disliked. The side I didn't like was when he was playing Rick Dalton, the person. This side of the Rick Dalton character was boring, as he was going through his day-to-day life, rehearsing lines for his roles. However, when we got Rick Dalton, the actor, that's when I actually enjoyed DiCaprio in this movie. That whole segment in the film where he's acting in a Western, that was one of the best executed scenes in the entire film. But yeah, like I said, Brad Pitt steals the show. In fact, I honestly wish that more time was given to Brad Pitt's character, as he was way more interesting. And I saw this film with friends and we all made a good point. More focus should have been put on Brad Pitt's character. You can still have DiCaprio's character in the film, but just don't show too much of him because honestly, his stuff was just uninteresting. Brad Pitt's character only had a few layers to him which could have been expanded upon immensely. This film also didn't feel like a Tarantino film. For a good 2 hours of this movie, it honestly felt like someone else directed this movie. It was only in the last half hour where I said to myself, this is Tarantino. Overall, while this film is not Tarantino's grand masterpiece, this is still a pretty solid film for what I got. And the issues I had with this film, while they sounded major, they honestly didn't hurt that much of the film for me. Like I said, for me, this film felt like too much of an observational movie where we're just watching the 60s. The film also lacked a clear-cut story, there was no conflict. And while I did love a lot of the characters, some weren't done as good and some felt irrelevant, especially Al Pacino. His part in the movie was kind of like, well, he's in the movie. But yeah, besides all those negatives, there was still a lot to this film I liked. Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie played my favorite characters in the film. The atmosphere of 1960s Hollywood I enjoyed viewing. Everything on the technical side was fantastic. And I just loved all the references to the movies and TV shows of that era. And especially the segments where they were shooting movie scenes. So yeah, in the end, as a film designed to be for the lovers of cinema, this film was pure delight. However, I just wish that there was a bit more to the story and to the film in general. And I'm gonna give Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a 9 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, be sure to my Facebook page, follow me on Twitter, and subscribe to my channel below. As always, I'm NETX5. Thank you for watching.